Patrick, I'm starting with you because we were having a conversation this afternoon about when you are in, Patrick, you'll say who you are, but you're from Land Rover, and when you are in a new role in an organisation, or you're trying to make a lot of change in an organisation, it means that you have to get people to behave very differently. And as a CMO, how challenging is that, and how do you have to treat your people to get them to change?
How do I get people to change? I think first and foremost by understanding them, and understanding a lot of the culture that's gone way before me, and before my time at the company. And I think the more time you spend there, the easier the answer becomes in creating the change that you need to create. I mean, technically you know what to do as a marketeer, but it's about human relationships at the end of the day, as everybody's talked about here. So fundamentally, understanding how those humans tick, what their fears are, what their hopes are, what's gone before them, you know, and maybe how you can approach things differently is how I'm making, I guess, some level of progress at Jaguar Land Rover.
Thank you. There was a question just somewhere around here.
Hi, I'm Yanni from Omega Pharma. We are an unknown company for most of you. Used to work at P&G, and one of our challenges, and it is bloody hard, is to get great people from the industry. And other than using other people to hire others, which has worked very well for us, one of the key things that made a difference for us is values, and defining early on a set of values that we all believed in. And I was wondering, because none of you mentioned that, and I wanted to put the question to you about how values are important in attracting, retaining.
Actually, it ties into one or two other things that people were saying as well, I think, which is, I think, particularly when you're trying to change an organisation as well, you've got to have clarity of vision, but it's got to have an integrity to it, and you just have to stick with it, because when you're going through a period of changes, I was trying to describe, there's all sorts of impediments, and there's all sorts of brickbats, and you have moments of doubt yourself as well, as that transition's going on. And I think it's the same for your people as well, and you've got a kind of reek of integrity. And I think in our organisation we did toy with the idea of describing very specifically the values that we stood for, but we kind of dropped it as an idea, because we felt we just wanted to make very apparent to people that we believed in what we said, and there was an integrity about us. So we're sort of a relatively small organisation compared to many businesses in the room, and it's a very personal and informal organisation, but we've always prided ourselves as a management team, Steve's here as well, that we will there's integrity to how we behave, and that's kind of my answer to it, really.
Julian?
Yeah.
Vision and values.
But I don't know. I think it's a tricky one, isn't it? It's a tricky one. I don't know. I think from the guy, I believe in that. You know, when a man starts talking about his values, you can be pretty damn sure he doesn't have any. I think companies need to operate. Great companies operate to a proper great code, and it's as simple as that. I think when you document values, I personally think it's really dangerous. I just don't understand it. I don't get me wrong. People spend in my career, all my career, people have sat down and tried to say, let's document our values. I'll tell you, I'm out the room so quickly. Or they are. I mean, it's just. You know, if you want great products and great people, you've just got to behave with take the long-term view in mind. You've got to nurture your people. You've got to nurture your customers. But I don't think it's something you can write on the wall. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong.
I don't agree.
Julian, that's so interesting you said that, because I would have said, of all the people I know,
Yeah.
you have such strong
We do.
sense of purpose.
We
and
damn
vision
well
and
do.
purpose.
And when
Just because you don't write it down.
we do, and it breaks my heart when people feel they need to write it down. It breaks my heart because good people on the whole are good. We are good people in this room. We want to do good. We want to nurture each other. We want to look after each other. You know, I don't have an agreement with the way I treat my children, my wife. It's not written down anywhere. Ridiculous.
Caroline, tell me.
Yeah, I have to disagree. So
Good. Well, that's sitting next to each other.
No, it works. Both work. I'm sure yours work.
Caroline,
so
tell me why you disagree, Caroline.
So the Google values are available to everyone who goes on the site, actually. So it's a set of values that we've agreed a long time ago. It's about 14 years ago, and they stayed the same. They don't change. We don't make the list shorter or longer. But it's you know where it becomes really important is when we have to take big decisions as a company. So when I'm going to give that example of China. And when we decided to pull out China for a while because they were censoring some of the search results of Google, and it stick to we don't do evil, and we basically we won't take no for an answer. So if we can't provide a whole lot of information to people, then we'd rather not be there. And we don't agree with the values of that country. So I think for important decision, it's important, especially because imagine you're on the board of directors of Google globally. Got so many. So you've got the PR person who's going to say, it's bad for the brand, and marketing person, and you've got the salesperson who's going to say, but I would be representing that many $1 million and that many users, and that you just need to go back to your core thing, which is. One of them is the most important thing is we do not do evil, and it was deemed at the time that staying in China at the time was didn't stick to that. So for us it was proven. It's not something we talk about every day. We don't say our values are, but when at moments where we need to take a big decisions, that comes back to that. And same thing internally. We've got some values with people. We treat people fairly. When we're not fair, well, we take actions, and for me, as in HR, that's very very important. That's the first value. So when a manager says, we could deal with that problem that way, if we're not being fair, and that's where I just have to say no, and that's not what we're going to do that way. So for me, that's important. That gathers people back to what the brand represents internally and externally.
Yeah, Grant, when you're dealing with people and businesses, how important is it that their vision and values are something that you communicate? And
it's becoming incredibly important, and I think as we move into a sort of new era, perhaps a less sort of aggressively sort of capitalistic sort of era, values, real values are going to become incredibly important to employees, and I think particularly to the younger generation. I think you've got a mindset there. Anybody under 25, 30 has a very, very different mindset to the people that preceded them, and it isn't just about working for an incredibly successful company that makes lots of profit. They are looking for something more fundamental that they can believe in, and if they don't like it, they just go. It's as simple as that. So values are incredibly important. I think they do have to be written at some level, have to be articulated, but then absolutely they have to be lived, and that's as much about from the senior level as right the way down to the most junior person. So the CEO of the business has to live those values, and can't be swanning around in a sort of private jet if that is actually inconsistent with the values of the organisation.
thank you.
Hi. First of all, thank you. My first Oyster Club event. It's been fantastic. Great panel of speakers, and I'm going to touch base with Stuart, Grant and Caroline for a job, I'm sure, afterwards. But I wanted to say thank you to Julian. I think Julian is a brilliant example, actually, of a leader who is living by his values, who lives by intuition, who is setting the culture of his business. So I thank you, and I think the warmth you felt in a room, that's really what is attracting talent, back to Grant's point. So thank you for that. And then the other question, rather than sycophantic, is as someone that's moved on from Pret a Manger and is now driving the Itsu culture, there was such an amazing PR story around the recruiting at Pret a Manger, that all these graduates, that's something ridiculous, like 20,000 graduates for one position at Pret a Manger in Holborn. How did they do that? Is it true? You know, it was an amazing story. And so how do you recruit against, actually, I guess, a competitor now?
I don't know if that story is true.
It got a lot of publicity.
Did it? I don't know. I don't think Pret a Manger still has any. I don't think it has a PR thing. I don't know. I don't know. What was? Sorry, your question was how do we recruit managers? How do we recruit great people?
They had a phenomenal story about every graduate recruitment in the country practically was trying to get a job. They couldn't get a job in the usual
Really?
industry, so therefore they were queuing up to get a job at Pret a Manger, and that was a big story because it was so unusual.
Yeah.
Do you think there's no truth in that at all? It was PR.
No. I think I believe there's one job available. This sounds dreadful, doesn't it? There is one job available for every 100 applicants. That is bad. I mean, that's not a great thing for this country. I think it's tragic, but it's very good for us. Obviously, we're very lucky. But I don't think we take that lightly. I mean, the nurturing of the people who work in the company is endless. It's endless, and therefore, I mean, on the whole, the talent comes up through the company. I really believe enormously in most people. Actually, most people, if given a chance, have talent. They can engage. They have warmth. They have ability. It's just you've got to try and, I believe, maybe it's easier in my business than Google, but you've got to create an environment, a platform where people can shine and rise. It sounds trite, but it's true. So yeah, we're lucky that we have a lot of people applying to work for us. Yeah.
Toby, I think you've got a question.
I just had a question picking up on what Caroline said about not punishing people for failure. Do you think that there is a danger, particularly with the younger generation, that we are almost going too far on the carrot end of managing people rather than the stick, and that sometimes you need to balance that out a little bit? I personally feel that I've been in situations where I've been trying to massage a little bit too much, and actually sometimes I've actually should have gone a little bit harder when people haven't delivered on what they should deliver.
So, yeah, you're completely right. So the good thing of Google is that everything you want to do, you can do, or if you really want, you can make it happen. However, there's some things that you can't get away with. So you've got some targets, you've got key objectives to meet on a quarterly basis, and it's driven on a quarterly basis. If you don't do it, then you don't get a good score, and therefore your bonus is impacted and all of that. So we're really, as I said, we pay on performance. So that's the unless you had something going on that you couldn't meet target, and it's reviewed on a weekly basis anyway. You have to stick to that. And to the other, there's something observation I've found over the last 8 years. Is that we've hired loads of young people, and they've never worked anywhere else than Google, and they don't appreciate how good they have it. And so we've realized it, and we say actually it's not a gift, because they're going to go to other companies and they're going to be disappointed, and they won't have appreciated. So what we're doing is that we're really trying to work with other companies, give them exposure to other companies. So we've got exchange programs, with other companies.
Terrible companies.
Terrible companies, so they go and then they come straight back again. Grant,
and they're not terrible at all, actually. Especially when you work in marketing. If you haven't done a stint in P&G, really, can you say you're like a big brand marketer? Maybe not. So we have like great partnership globally with P&G, Unilever, and all of that. But they see the difference, and they come back, happy to work at Google, but also with some some ideas on how to make things even better. And it's very difficult, and we're very spoiled. And I hear in the canteen, we didn't get that food, and we didn't get lobster, and we didn't get that. and sometimes I'm the one with the stick, like walking slow with the stick there and saying, you can't say this. So yes, so it's one of our values is to stay frugal and to appreciate what we have, and it's difficult to stick to that when we've got everything. So yes, part of the management role is to really manage people's
Grant,
expectations.
what did
Yeah, no, I think this issue of failure is really interesting, and I agree. I mean, I think there's two types of failure. There's incompetence, or laziness or whatever that needs to be punished, But actually, I don't think you punish people if they try and do something different, and that's the big difference. And that's where companies like Google and the new generation of companies really are changing the game. And they're changing the game for bigger, more established companies. And I think one of the really interesting things about leadership now is that leaders of businesses have got to get comfortable with failure, which is not something that your traditional CEO is very comfortable with. It's all about everything's got to be absolutely right, buttoned down and great, for the shareholder meeting or whatever. A lot of discomfort with failure. And the reality is that everything is changing so fast because of all the things we've talked about tonight, that in order for you to stay ahead of that change, you have to start placing bets and taking risks. And in the knowledge that of those 5 bets you place, 2 or 3 are going to go bad on you, and just be comfortable with that. And that's a major shift of thinking at the top level, but also there's a big organizational challenge about how you allow an organization to fail, and learn from that quickly, sort of fast failure, if you like. And Google are very, very good at that, actually, in the way they organize themselves.
From an agency perspective, I identify with what you're saying, Toby, because people are our product and are developing our product. So it's very easy from an agency perspective to allow yourself to lapse into a situation where you are creating an environment that can be too cozy for the wrong type of talent. So, I mean, our approach to that, I kind of hear what everyone's saying about failure, and we talk about living a life in beta, basically, which is nothing's ever perfect and finished and beautiful now. It's just stuff's moving too fast. But our approach to this area as managing talent and individuals is we try and always ensure that there are consequences to decisions and actions. So, positive and negative. It's not a threatening thing. It's just there are always consequences. I can place 5 bets if they're 5 big bets and they're all the wrong decisions. I'm going to get some consequences. So it's kind of. But I see exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, I think one of the things we talk a lot about is being fearless, having fearless conversations, which it's the same sort of thing. I don't think there's enough of that goes on personally, but there we are. Would you have a question or a comment?
Yeah, it's follow-up actually, I think, related to that. And it's really about incentivisation, and particularly incentivisation for, I guess, what you could call them Generation Y. And something that I've seen a lot of lately, and I'm wondering how you deal with it, is it feels as though, and I'm going to show my age here, but it feels as though the up-and-coming generation are incentivised by different types of things. So perhaps because in London you're not going to be able to buy a house until you're in your late 30s, you don't try and save for that. Therefore, there's less incentive to work hard because you don't really care about the pay rise because it isn't going to make a difference in the same way. And perhaps a feeling as well of that they don't necessarily stick at things in the same way because there is that lack of expectation of progression. I'm wondering whether you've come across that and how you deal with it within your respective industries.
I suppose we haven't seen it quite in the way that you've described it. What we see with the Gen Y thing, what we have definitely seen are younger people coming into our business now who have very different expectations, actually, from what we are going to give them. And I'm not sure, some people say it's because of the way that people are educated and all the rest of it. It's all a little bit different, but it's not a bad thing. It's just they have different expectations. That they arrive and they wonder what we're going to do, what happens now, and then what happens, and then how are you going to do it? And that's why we did the academies I was describing earlier, is to actually, in a kind of a nice way, welcome people to the real world. Although these academies are a bit unreal, but it's really kind of saying, actually, you're just going to have to understand your personal responsibilities towards your own development and to that of the people around you. And let's really properly immerse ourselves in that and understand it, so you know more about yourself. Otherwise you're going to get frustrated.
Yeah, Julian, you're quite outspoken.
About what?
About most things. How do you get people to manage? How do you manage the expectations of people you work with? Do they deliver for you? Do you get disappointed by people?
It's a very, very difficult question to answer. Probably yes, but I think I think how you remunerate people is a fascinating, complex issue, really complex. It's a question of trying to understand what motivates different people. When I was young, I used to go around just giving shares to everybody, and then I realised that actually it's not what a lot of people even wanted. I got myself into a terrible muddle because I'd given all the shares into these companies, they didn't even want the shares. What they wanted is something, they didn't want what I wanted, they wanted something else. They wanted a fast car, convertible car, you know. I wanted a yacht. I mean, it just, it was different. And therefore I think remuneration is really, really quite a tricky thing. And I think what Google do is probably, you know, you really need to give a lot of time and patience to this and do it really properly, because if it's not done well, it can have the most appalling negative results. It's a tricky one. But I think that, look, we all know that most people don't really come to work for what they're paid. They come to work for much deeper stuff, and it's not, you know, bonuses. You know, in some respect, unless handled well, can do more damage than good. I think it's a tricky subject, and I think a lot of people have got it quite wrong. I think people are it's a really blunt instrument, and I think it often insults the very people you're trying to get most out of.
Sarah Ellis is from Sainsbury's, and she's sitting down here. One of the things, you've just launched a Marketing Excellence Academy, and one of the things you've done is not forced everyone to go on it. So I'm interested as to why did you do that, and what's the impact of having just launched it on the people? Do the people feel any different? Do they feel like it's something that they deserve?
As to why we've not forced them to do it. We did consider it, I'll be honest. We put a lot of time and effort into creating a marketing excellence programme, which is quite new to the organisation. And ideally, I do want all 140 people to go through it. However, to some of the points that the speakers made, I think we felt that really for this to work, actually, it needs to be something that you take personal ownership for. So I think we see our role as creating the excellence programme and providing, whether it's academies or workshops or whatever it might be, as kind of we're enabling that and providing access. And then actually it comes down to individual responsibility to take ownership for their own career. And of course you will always get different levels of engagement in that. But actually that's how you identify sometimes your top talent, your high performance, your high potential people. That's how sometimes people decide that maybe we're not the organisation for them, or you know, if those people are not that interested, then actually kind of that natural process is probably not a bad thing. And certainly I'm happy to share that I've kind of learned the hard way, because it's something I'm very passionate about, that maybe in the past I've kind of wondered why people haven't been really engaged all of the time. But actually I think your role as an organisation or as a corporate, not as an individual, is just to make those things accessible for people, to take feedback, to continually improve those things. But that's all you can kind of do. So there's only kind of so far you can take it. And then I think it comes down to individuals rather than kind of the organisation to make it mandatory to people. And actually what we found is, you know, 90% of people, 80% of people do then absolutely embrace that. And, you know, we put our excellence programme onto our systems, etc., and we get, you know, 100% of people signing up within days, etc. So most people are really passionate about it. I would absolutely love to get to the place where, you know, 65% of what we're doing is created and trained by our organisation. I think that's a brilliant philosophy. Something I kind of wrote down and sort of thought I would aspire to that. We're probably aiming for sort of 15-20% in terms of getting Sainsbury's people to develop and then train the trainer type programmes. But I think if you can become self-sufficient, that's incredibly powerful. I think it just takes quite a bit of work.
We're almost timed out. Oh, Ash, have you got one last? Okay, you're allowed to have a last question.
Thanks
then,
very
Ash.
much. Ash Taylor from Vodafone. A question for the panel in terms of the balance of internal talent recruitment and management versus recruiting talent externally. And there's lots of organisations who put quotas on it, for example. What's your view in terms of that? Should there be more organisations building talent from within, or building the diversity from external?
Who wants to start with that?
Because you might expect me to say no, it's got to all be external. And the reality is that, you know, it depends very much on where the business is in its cycle, what condition the business is in. I mean, you know, we do quite a lot of CEO recruitment, and one of the truisms is that if the business is in basically good shape, and it's heading in the right direction, no business is perfect, but its basic, its fundamentals are good, that actually an internal succession is a far better idea than an external CEO. Because actually the impetus of somebody coming from outside is to change, because you've got to make your mark particularly as a CEO. So in reality, internal succession is a better answer. Whereas if the business is tanking in some way, is fundamentally challenged, you've got to bring somebody from outside because there's something wrong and something has to be readjusted and some of the sort of holy cows have to be sort of slain. So, and I think you could spread that more broadly across the wider organisation. I mean, I think if there's a good, healthy culture and it's a well-structured business where people are getting lots of variety and are moving around within the organisation and getting new challenges, then actually, you know, internal promotion is the best way because that incentivizes the next generation through. They can see that the younger guys in the business are moving up and through and becoming leaders within that business. So, you know, you've got to have a good reason why you're bringing external talent in, and that's because you want to. Normally, it's because you want to change something. Something in the DNA of the business needs to be changed, and the gene pool needs to be changed.
And Stuart, you talk quite a lot about that for over the last 5 years. But what about now?
Yeah, so, yeah, as I say, I mean, the gene pool thing, I mean, there are definitely situations where we very consciously recruited externally because we need to change our gene pool. We know we need to draw in different type of talent and background and expertise. But we had this moment a few years ago when it was a company meeting actually, and we one part of it was a celebration of all the stuff people had done outside work. And it was just unbelievable. It was unbelievable. And you shouldn't be surprised because it's 500 reasonably sort of active and intelligent people in the company, you know. So, I mean, truly unbelievable what some people had done, you know. They'd set up businesses themselves, had done all sorts of charitable initiatives, awesome fundraising. You know, one guy who got within half an hour of swimming the channel and the tide turned and he failed and went back and did it 2 weeks later, all this sort of stuff, you know. But I mean, literally, you know, and that struck me because I thought, actually, if these people are capable of doing these extraordinary things, then the fact that I only see them as relatively limited is just because I've created an environment that is limiting them, and I see them in that context. So in answer to the question, I think all organisations would have a huge amount more that they could get out of their people if somehow they could kind of liberate that talent.
Yeah. I mean, we kind of think, and we've heard a bit about Google, that you spend a lot of time trying to liberate talent, as Stuart just said. The balance between internal and external promotion, how does that work?
So it's changed over the year. In the beginning, obviously, we had to grow a lot, so we hired a lot of our talent externally. Right now, we feel our position, I would say, 70% internally and the rest externally. Where we need external talent is where we need an expertise that we have looked into and we don't have in the team. We're opening, you know, we're going to new areas of businesses right now where we need to bring people with the expertise and the industry knowledge in. And the second bit that we do very, very wrongly, and I would love to share this with you, is on women and diversity. And at senior level, we do not have enough women, especially on the sales organization. So this is where we're looking at always looking for external women in leadership position outside to join directly into leadership positions at Google. This is, you know, because we need to bring the balance back.
Yeah.
It's quite bad.
Julian, when you've started a company like Pret and then you start a company like Itsu, presumably because you've got fantastic people running Pret, don't you want to just take them with you? How do you deal with that?
It would be nice, but obviously I have to, you know, I respect the leadership there enormously. I'm working there still. It would be very difficult, as tempting as it would be. And also I think a company needs to develop its own culture. I really, really do. I think it's difficult just taking one and just force feeding it into the other. I think it's definitely developed its own culture. I agree. I think we do about 70% internal and 30% external. And I'm sure all of you in this room know a lot more about this than I do. But I do think on the subject of marketing, I feel vulnerable, and I think if you want genius, you need to go out and refresh it. I think, personally, I think marketing is best outsourced, actually. Personally, I think marketing is a particularly fascinating, very quick, remarkably challenging thing, and I think you need people who are out there, who understand it, who are living it.
And do you, now that you've spent a couple of hours with lots of marketeers, feel that your love for marketeers is greater? Or?
Yeah, I have a huge amount of respect for marketeers. I definitely do. I mean, I think a product is only as good as the people who can actually extol its virtues and talk about it. And I think the hard thing for marketing people is that so often the companies make dreary products, and it's up to these remarkable people to try and flog them. And you do a very good job.
Thank you,
You
Julian.
do.
Thank you all very much. Thank you, Caroline, Julian, Grant, and Stuart. Really, really appreciate your time.